It was just before the important college entrance exams were about to start. Mark, the transfer student Chloe had started liking, was angry again. He said he didn't want to see me around. Because of this, Chloe came to me and told me I should transfer to another school. "That other school is quite good too," she said, trying to sound reassuring. "When Mark calms down, I'll arrange for you to come back. Please, Alex, don't make things difficult for me." I just nodded, agreeing to what she asked. I went and packed my few belongings, getting ready to leave the school I had known for so long. I later heard that her best friend tried to change her mind. "Alex has a hearing impairment, Chloe, remember that? What if he gets bullied if he goes to another school all by himself? You two grew up together. Are you really okay with sending him away like this?" Chloe, from what I was told, just raised an eyebrow. "That was in the past," she apparently said. "And anyway, in less than 3 months, I'll have him back here." 3 months passed. When Chloe finally called me, asking me to come back, a girl who was next to me leaned in close to my hearing aid and giggled. "Sweetie," she whispered, her voice playful, "you really need to close your eyes when you kiss. And no answering calls from other women while you're with me." The day the results for the mock exams were announced, I had moved up in the class rankings, from 5th place to 3rd. Mark, on the other hand, had dropped significantly, from 20th place to somewhere outside the top 30. I heard someone in the class wondering aloud, how did Mark fall so much in the rankings, and Alex jumped up 2 whole places? Mark shot a sharp, angry look in my direction. "Alex, I bet you're really happy now, aren't you?" he sneered. "You're studying so hard all the time, just to make other people think Chloe made a bad choice by choosing me, right?" After saying that, he stormed out of the classroom. He didn't even come back when the bell rang for the next class. Our teacher, not knowing what had happened, looked around and then asked me, since I was the class president, to go and find Mark. I searched for about half an hour before I saw him. He was sitting by a flower bed near the basketball court. Chloe was there with him, speaking to him quietly, trying to calm him down. Whatever she said seemed to work, because he eventually laughed. The sunlight was filtering down through the leaves of the trees, making the scene look like something out of a high school romance movie. When they noticed me standing there, Chloe's eyes narrowed. To stick up for Mark, I guess, she picked up a badminton shuttlecock and aimed it at me. But instead of just hitting me, it accidentally struck my hearing aid. There was a sudden buzzing sound in my ear, and then just like that, I couldn't hear anything with my left ear anymore. Chloe clearly hadn't expected that to happen. I saw a flash of surprise in her eyes, but it disappeared very quickly. Then, she walked over to me. "Alex," she said, her voice firm, "you should transfer schools. Mark has a temper, and he always ends up picking a fight because of you." It was strange hearing her say that, because only a month ago she had asked me, "Alex, after the college entrance exams are over, will you be my boyfriend?" With the exams getting so close, my first instinct had been to say no to the transfer. But Chloe had pressed me. "Alex," she'd said, "don't make things so hard for me. With you here, Mark is upset every single day. You don't want to put your uncle through any unnecessary stress, do you?" My dad worked for Chloe's family. By mentioning my uncle, who was my dad's brother and also worked there, she was essentially threatening my dad's job. I couldn't let him lose his job, especially not when he was in his middle age. "All right," I had said, giving in. Chloe had seemed relieved. "When Mark calms down," she promised again, "I'll bring you back." Mark must have overheard our conversation because he came over then, arrogantly tugging at Chloe's hand. "Chloe," he said, "I think Northwood High School seems pretty good." Northwood High was known for being the lowest-ranked school in our entire city. Chloe knew that too, but she just smiled casually at Mark and said, "All right, whatever you say." I clenched the broken piece of my hearing aid in my palm, so tightly that it dug into my skin. After standing there for a long time, I finally tossed the broken hearing aid into a nearby trash can. Then, I turned around and walked away. Chloe quickly arranged for my transfer. Soon, the whole school learned that I was leaving. While I was packing my things from my locker, I could hear everyone around me gossiping. No way! Is Chloe really kicking Alex out just for Mark? But they grew up together, didn't they? Chloe used to treat Alex so well. But ever since Mark showed up, she hasn't even walked home with Alex anymore. What a shame. Alex's grades were so good. He could have easily gotten into a top university. And transferring schools right now, just before the exams, that's really going to mess things up for him. He's going to Northwood High, you know? That place is famous for being full of troublemakers. All of Alex's hard work might just go to waste. Under all those sympathetic stares, I hugged my box of belongings and prepared to leave. As I was walking down the stairwell, I overheard Chloe's friend talking to her again, trying to make her reconsider. Alex has a hearing impairment, Chloe, you know that. If you send him to another school all alone, won't he get bullied? You two grew up together. Are you really okay with sending him away? Chloe leaned against the wall, and I heard her chuckle lightly. What's there to be unwilling about? She said. The past is the past, and besides, I'll have him back here in 3 months. After saying that, she seemed to notice something and looked up. She saw me standing at the entrance of the stairwell. Her gaze fell on my ear, which was still a bit red and swollen from where the shuttlecock had hit my hearing aid, and she frowned. She instinctively came up to me and took my hand. Come on, she said. Let's go buy you a new hearing aid. Consider it compensation. I shook my head. No need, I told her. That hearing aid was a gift from you. Now that it's broken, we're even. When she had accidentally broken my hearing aid, the pain in my ear had been sharp, but it had also made me determined to cut ties with Chloe completely. Chloe looked stunned. That hearing aid had been a gift for my 17th birthday. Chloe's family wasn't the type to believe in spending a lot of money on kids, so her pocket money wasn't much. She had worked a summer job for 2 whole months to save up enough money to buy it for me, using all her earnings. I remembered how, back then, when I was asleep, 17-year-old Chloe had quietly put that hearing aid on for me. Chloe used to be incredibly good to me. It was so obvious that her mom had joked countless times about me being her future son-in-law. Chloe would always reply boldly, "You don't need to say it, Mom. I've been raising my future husband for years. You think I'd just give him to someone else?" Everyone who knew us believed that we would go to college together, start dating officially, and eventually get married. Chloe had grown up next door to me, living with her grandpa. We were inseparable as kids. She was the one who would wake me up in the mornings for school, and she always insisted on carrying my backpack for me. She had been the one to confess her feelings first, and I, blushing, had agreed that I felt the same way. Everything changed when Mark showed up. As a new transfer student, he caught Chloe's eye almost immediately. I knew from that moment that something was different between us. And sure enough, Chloe started getting closer to Mark. She stopped riding to and from school with me. The seat on her bike that used to be mine was now always occupied by Mark. Even as I started to distance myself from Chloe, Mark still seemed to dislike me. He kept accusing me of studying hard just to make it look like Chloe had made the wrong choice in choosing him over me. Over time, even Chloe started to believe it, and she became annoyed with me. I saw her holding Mark's hand in public and heard her call me conniving. Mark even accused me of overstepping boundaries and called me a third party in their relationship. But I had grown up with Chloe. She had confessed her feelings to me. She had said we'd be together after the college exams. Through all of Mark's accusations, Chloe just stood silently on the side, never explaining anything, never defending our past. I was completely disheartened by it all. I thought that if I just stayed away from her, it would bring some peace. But it hadn't, not really, until today, until the hearing aid broke. Chloe opened her mouth, looking like she wanted to say something more, but Mark interrupted. "Chloe, come on. Let's go back together, he urged. She glanced at me one last time, and then left with him. When I returned home that evening, at the dinner table, Dad timidly mentioned that he wanted to quit his job and start a small business of his own. He carefully asked for Mom's and my opinion. "If I start a business," he said, his voice a little hesitant, "our lives won't be as stable as they are now, and money will probably be tight. I was thinking maybe we could sell this house and get a smaller one in the suburbs. What do you both think?" Mom hesitated. "Maybe not right now," she said. "Alex is about to start college soon. Once he graduates, we might need to prepare a dowry, just in case." They both knew about me and Chloe, or at least what they thought was still our situation. That's why, even though many people had tried to lure Dad away from Chloe's family's company with better offers over the years, he had never wavered. In fact, since Chloe was an only child, my dad had been especially dedicated and loyal in his work with her family. Dad pursed his lips and said, "That's true." I suddenly spoke up, interrupting them. "Dad, I support your decision to start your own business." I knew my dad's abilities well. He had years of experience in his field and all the resources he needed. Over the past few years, we had used up a lot of our savings because of Grandma and Grandpa's health issues. He must have been really eager to start his own business for a while now, and must have thought it through very carefully. Otherwise, he wouldn't be bringing it up at this moment. "Do what you want to do, Dad." My dad's eyes turned a little red. Mom then chimed in, "Alex, you've really grown up. Well, if that's what you both think, then go ahead and do it." Once the decision was made, Mom immediately contacted a real estate agent. Even though our house was old, it was in a central location, which was a big plus. Dad offered a fair price, so the deal was closed pretty quickly. The new owner kindly agreed to let us stay for a few more days while we sorted things out. Every day after work, my parents went out to look at houses in the suburbs. The day of my birthday arrived. My mom got off work early and asked me to take some birthday cake over to Chloe's place. I hesitated for a moment, but Mom spurred me on, so I eventually went to Chloe's front door. Mom didn't know that it was Chloe who had pushed for me to transfer schools. After all, Chloe had always told everyone that transferring was my idea. And though Mom hadn't agreed with it, once she saw the transfer had already been processed, she just sighed and didn't say much else. It was Chloe's mom who opened the door. When she saw me, she said happily, "Alex, it's so nice to see you." "Yes, ma'am," I replied. "My mom asked me to bring over some cake." Just then, I heard laughter coming from Chloe's room. It was unmistakably Mark's voice. Sure enough, Chloe, wearing a short and rather revealing dress, came out of her room with Mark trailing right behind her. Chloe's mom looked embarrassed. "Alex," she started. "He's just a friend Chloe brought over." I knew what she was trying to say and just shook my head. "Don't worry about it, ma'am," I said. "I've dropped off the cake, so I'll head out now." I said this and left right away. As I was walking away, I heard her starting to scold Chloe. "Chloe, aren't you being a bit too much? You used to like Alex, didn't you? You'll hurt his feelings. Alex is probably very upset now." And then I heard Chloe's nonchalant reply, "Whatever." The next morning, my parents and I followed the moving company's truck to our new home. Dad had opted for a well-maintained, second-hand place because the price was good. Conveniently, it was also really close to Northwood High School. On my first day at Northwood High, I refused my parents' offer to drop me off. I knew Dad was busy with all the work involved in starting his new business, so I just took my backpack and went alone. The class teacher was a chubby lady who looked genuinely pleased to see me. When I got to the classroom door, there was a lot of noise coming from inside, a real ruckus. Because I'm deaf in my left ear, my right ear is super sensitive to sound. So when someone inside suddenly slammed a chair down, it startled me. The teacher smiled at me soothingly. "Don't be scared," she said. "Wait here for a bit." Then she walked into the classroom. put her hands on her hips, and hollered, "Quiet down, all of you!" No one paid much attention to her. Her face flushed red with frustration. "Be quiet, or else I'm calling your parents." That finally got them to pipe down a little. "Today," she announced, "our class has a new transfer student." I walked in and stood at the podium at the front of the class. I introduced myself simply, "Hi everyone, I'm Alex." Immediately there was a chorus of excited screams from some of the girls. "The transfer student is so cute!" "Quick, is my hairstyle okay today?" From a corner of the class, someone grumbled impatiently, "So noisy." Silence fell over the room again. Surprised by the sudden quiet, I watched as the teacher, looking annoyed, directed me to sit in the empty seat, right in front of the person who had just spoken. I hesitated for a moment, but the teacher reassured me. "It's okay. She doesn't pick fights with good students." That sounded rather intimidating. My seatmate, the person I was now sitting in front of, turned out to be a girl. She introduced herself. "I'm Sarah." I just nodded. When the teacher came back in and started the lesson, I took out my books right away. The pace of teaching at Northwood High was definitely very different from my old school. During class, most of the students seemed to do their own thing. Some were sleeping, others were reading novels, and a few were even doing their nails. Paper planes, with what looked like cheat sheets scribbled on them, flew over my head from time to time. It seemed like the teacher was used to it all. After sipping some tea from his mug, he asked the class, "Now, where did I leave off?" I gently reminded him, "The third big question, sir." He nodded, looking astonished. "Someone's actually listening to me," he exclaimed. Later, a friendly guy named Tom told me that if Northwood High was generally considered a subpar school, then Class 13, my class, was at the very bottom of that. It was where all the struggling senior students were gathered. He said that when I transferred, our class teacher had practically cried her eyes out in front of the principal just to get me assigned to her class. Watching Tom casually eat ice cream while the teachers were trying to teach, I realized how bizarre, yet strangely lively, this new world felt. After that first day, the teacher clearly got more enthusiastic about teaching. Gradually, a few other students in the class got motivated by my presence, I guess, and began to listen to the lessons too. This continued until dismissal time. As soon as the bell rang, everyone rushed out of the classroom. I noticed a girl in the corner, still asleep at her desk. It was Sarah. The school was about to close for the day. I approached her and said gently, "School's out." She looked up, her eyes slowly focusing, her sharp gaze locked onto mine. She had a high-bridged nose and a slight smirk playing on her lips. "Thanks," she said. In the next second, she stood up without offering any explanation, hooked her long fingers onto the collar of her jacket, and swung it over her shoulder. "Let's go," she said. "The gates are closing soon." I snapped out of my thoughts and agreed. Then, I trailed behind her as she walked towards her black bike, one hand resting on it. She painted quite a picture, and other students passing by glanced at her, but she seemed completely used to the attention. I intentionally slowed my pace, trying to create more space between us. But then she also slowed her pace. The afternoon sunlight poured down in front of her, and her shadow stretched out until it touched my feet. She turned to me and said, a casual friendliness in her voice, "You're slower than a snail, dude." Walking back, I realized we lived in the same apartment complex. She noticed it too and smiled slightly. From Tom, I learned her name was Sarah. During lunch a few days later, I saw a bunch of girls following Sarah in the cafeteria, all of them waving her meal card around. "Sarah, I blew through my allowance this month. Help me out," one said. "Me too," cried another. Sensing my gaze from across the cafeteria, Sarah glanced at me, then turned to the girls and said dismissively, "Scram." Yet she still handed over her card to them. The crowd of girls departed instantly. A few days after that, our class teacher set up a one-on-one tutoring program. Basically, the class ranking dictated the partners. The top-performing student would help the student at the very bottom, the second best would help the second to the last, and so on. "All right, everyone," the teacher announced. "Let's start pairing you up, starting with Alex, who will be paired with the student who is last from the bottom. The student who was last in the class." A girl sitting in the front immediately stood up and raised her hand eagerly. But then someone stood up behind her, and a cool voice said, "It's me." The girl in front turned around. It was Sarah. "Sarah, stop messing around," the first girl said. "Last time you scored 2 points higher than me. I am the last in the class. Homeroom teacher, please help me. Class monitor." Just a few days ago, I had been appointed class monitor by the teacher. Sarah just gave the other girl a look. "I cheated last time," she stated flatly. The other girl sat down in a huff, muttering, "Cheating when it's just a difference of a few points, honestly." While I was tutoring Sarah, I found out that she didn't really try to solve the problems during the exams. It wasn't until I had her complete an entire exam paper under my supervision that I saw her potential. She scored almost perfectly. Then why was she always at the bottom of the class rankings? I looked through her other past papers. Well, it turned out she was really good at some subjects, like math and science, but really bad at others, especially essay writing. After I explained a few difficult problems to her, she quickly grasped the concepts. People who are good at math are just naturally smart, I thought. I was a bit jealous, actually. After all, I had been self-studying and doing homework diligently every single day since elementary school. I rarely went out on weekends and even did late-night tutoring sessions, often washing my face with cold water to continue reviewing when I felt sleepy during those late nights. I only had to explain a few key knowledge points to Sarah, yet she quickly understood them thoroughly. After a period of tutoring her, I realized Sarah had a great memory, but her essay writing skills were genuinely lacking. So I tried to explain to her the key points of writing a good essay. "It's okay to use some figures of speech and idioms," I told her, "and you should try to elaborate a bit on your points." After a while, she leaned slightly on the desk behind her, her eyebrows slightly raised. "Like what?" she asked. "You could just try to combine an idiom into a simple sentence to practice," I suggested. She chuckled. "Okay. For example, when the class monitor and I happen to fall asleep on the desk during study hall, you can add an idiom to describe it." I encouraged her with a look. The early summer heat was starting to rise in the classroom. I took a sip of the juice my mom had packed for me. She looked at me, her dark eyes deep and unreadable. "Just now," she said, her voice serious, "the class monitor and I had a romantic nap together." The juice I had just sipped sprayed out of my mouth completely, leaving nothing behind. There was only half a month left before the college entrance exams. We had a mock exam nearly every day, and the atmosphere in the school was incredibly tense. Our homeroom teacher, perhaps sensing the stress, changed the last self-study class of the week to a free activity period. Tom came up to me, looking gloomy. "After the college exams end," he sighed, "I'll have to part ways with my goddess. What a college entrance exam season this is. It's more like a secret crush ending season for me." I remembered walking past the sports field with him last time, when he had pointed out a girl and told me that she was his goddess. She was a girl whose glasses were thicker than a beer bottle, and who always had a book in her hand. Tom had apparently gone to bring her water once, and she had just glanced at him coldly, saying, "You should give up, Tom. I won't be with someone who's a failing student." I wanted to comfort Tom, but he just sighed again and said, "As expected from a cool academic star, really cold. But you know what? That just makes me like her more. It occurred to me then that the school medroom hadn't done vision tests for ages. It seemed George's eyesight wasn't that great if he thought that was attractive. "Alex," Tom asked then, "do you want to date someone? You know, dating?" I paused my pen. Suddenly, I felt someone's breath wash over my neck from behind, seemingly waiting for my answer. I shook my head. "Dating is less rewarding than solving more practice problems," I said, trying to focus on my work. The next day, on the way home from school, Sarah blocked my path in a small alleyway. "Alex," she said, "let's talk after the college entrance exam." "Talk about what?" I asked, a little confused. She leaned in closer, staring straight at me. "About dating," she said simply. So, she did like me. I pressed my lips together, unsure how to respond. "No way," I finally managed. "Why not?" she challenged. "Your essay scored 3 points," I reminded her, trying to deflect. She ruffled her hair, looking genuinely aggrieved. "So what?" I smirked. "Tomorrow's mock exam. If you can score an average grade on your essay, then we'll talk." Sarah gritted her teeth. "All right," she declared. Just then, in my pocket, my phone vibrated. I took it out and accidentally answered the call. Chloe's voice came through the phone, sharp and demanding. "Alex, pack up your things. Come back to school tomorrow." That superior, granting tone of hers always left a weird feeling with me, as if she only had to speak, and I should immediately pack up my bags joyfully and rush back to her. I was baffled by her call. As I was about to hang up, someone near my hearing aid spoke out first. It was Sarah, leaning in again. "Sweetheart," she said clearly into the phone's microphone, "you should close your eyes when you're kissing. Also, try not to take calls from other women, okay?" Chloe on the other end of the line sounded furious. "Who are you? Alex! Before I change my mind, you pack up and come back here quickly." I looked up and saw Sarah's rebellious, smiling face. Without offering Chloe any explanation, I just said, "Nah, I'm good here at Northwood High." Chloe let out a frustrated laugh. "Alex, you'd better not play games with me. Northwood High, a place like that? Do you really plan to stay there until the college entrance exams? Isn't your dream to get into a prestigious university?" So, she did know what I wanted. She knew that Northwood High didn't offer the best education. But why should that mean anything to her now? She was the one who had forced me to move, sneaking around to arrange a transfer. And now, just when the exams were so close, she suddenly wanted me back? I hung up the phone and immediately blocked her number. When Chloe tried calling back, all she heard was the standard customer service reply telling her that the number she had dialed was unavailable. Alex had blocked her. In the over 3 months that had passed, Chloe hadn't seen me. Without someone to prepare her breakfast like I used to, she told herself she felt something was missing, simply because of habit. Even when she was with Mark, she often found herself looking back, searching for the face that had always been behind her, a face that was now gone. She tried to convince herself that it was only because we grew up together, and adjusting to the separation just took time. She didn't dwell on it too much. But almost every night, she would find herself standing by my old building, watching my room light, feeling a sense of ease when she saw it on. "It's just a little spat," she would think. Northwood High started its school day later than our old school did, so for over 3 months they had never run into each other. But thinking about the girl's voice she had heard on the phone earlier, she couldn't help but mind. Then she remembered, Alex likes her. When she had confessed her feelings to him, he had blushed and nodded. Growing up together, she understood Alex. He was always modest and cautious. How could he possibly date someone in a place like Northwood High, much less kiss a girl? He must have gotten someone to say that on purpose, just to get under her skin. Thinking this, she slightly let her worries go. Still, she went to his old building again that night, and seeing the familiar shadows moving behind the curtains of my old room, her heart relaxed. After the mock exam ended, Sarah cornered me in the school's equipment room. I was just heading downstairs to the student store. Sarah was standing near the bottom of the stairs, and when she heard a sound, she looked up at me, her gaze burning. "What are you doing here?" she asked, though it was obvious. She stepped forward, the sunlight streaming in from a nearby window making her look almost dazzling. I blinked. "What are you talking about?" I asked, feigning ignorance. She laughed, a knowing sound, and then precisely touched the spot behind my ear. Even with my hair covering it, her fingers pressed lightly on my hearing aid. "I know you're wearing a hearing aid, Alex," she said. "You're not trying to back out of our deal, are you?" She gritted her teeth, looking like she was ready to bite me if I confessed to trying to escape our agreement. A mumbled "no" was all I could manage. She stood up straight then and cleared her throat. "Good," she said. "Let's go. Our date awaits." She smiled boldly. After the real college entrance exam results finally came out, our class teacher sent a message in the group chat, inviting everyone for a final class meetup. She said she was treating us all. Everyone in Class 13 had done much better on the exams than she had expected. Cheers and excited messages filled the group chat immediately. The meetup was set for 7 o'clock that evening. When I came downstairs from my apartment, Sarah was already waiting at the door for me. Seeing me, a smirk formed on her lips, and she reached out and held my hand tightly. When we reached the restaurant where the meetup was being held, I quickly pulled my hand away just before we went inside, trying to avoid her suddenly darkened face. Inside, someone from our class asked curiously, "Is the class president close to Sarah? Why did you two come together?" I gave a half-hearted explanation. "No, not really close." Sarah looked up then, and I thought I saw a little hurt in her eyes. "Yeah," she said, her voice deceptively light. "Not close. We only kissed for half an hour earlier. And it wasn't just kissing for half an hour, you know. There was even a string of saliva when we parted." Her pale pink lips looked flushed red even now. Just then, the server opened the door to bring in the food, and everyone in the room hollered about eating up the teacher's salary, so thankfully no one heard Sarah's outrageous words clearly. I excused myself and loitered in the restroom for a while, splashing my face with cold water a few times. The heat of the moment, and from Sarah's teasing, finally began to fade. When I came out, Sarah was leaning against the hallway wall, her sharp eyes watching me. Even the dark strands of her hair falling across her forehead exuded a rebellious kind of vibe. The weather was quite hot, so she was wearing a simple, pure white t-shirt with a delicate silver necklace around her neck. Seeing me, she instinctively pulled out a tissue from her pocket and gently started drying my hands, which were still wet from the sink. "What about them?" I asked, nodding towards the private room where our classmates were. "Why is the room so quiet all of a sudden?" Sarah looked at my hands as she dried them, her voice slightly hoarse. "It's getting late," she said. "I told them to leave. Let's go. We should head back too." "I already paid the bill," I said, agreeing with her. Chloe eventually found out about my exam results from her mom. She remembered how 17-year-old Alex would often study late into the night, losing weight until she had insisted he rest by 10 o'clock every evening. Alex's eyes would sparkle back then, and he'd say that his dream was to get into a top college. Back then, she had casually promised him, "Sure, if you get in, I'll celebrate with you." Even if she hadn't made that promise, she knew that Alex would have been thrilled to tell her his good news as soon as he got accepted into his dream school. But now, she had learned about it indirectly, from her mom. Chloe realized that ever since Alex had gone to Northwood High, he hadn't reached out to her even once. Mark had told her that Alex was only doing it to provoke him, to make him jealous. But now, with the exams over, Alex seemed to have completely disappeared from her life. She walked to my old house, her steps hesitant. My old room light was still on. Chloe breathed a sigh of relief. She knocked on the door. Someone came to open it. Trying to control her expression and sound casual, she said, "Ma'am, I'm looking for—" She stopped mid-sentence. In front of her stood unfamiliar, middle-aged folks, dressed in pajamas. "Who are you?" the woman asked. "Why are you in Alex's house?" the man added, both of them frowning at her. "Alex? This is our house," the woman stated. Thinking for a second, they explained, "Oh, you mean the previous owners? This house, we bought it over 3 months ago." "Where did they move?" Chloe inquired, a sense of dread creeping in. "How would we know?" they replied, already closing the door. Chloe stood there on the doorstep, utterly confused. Alex had moved away? How come she didn't know? Why didn't he tell her where he was going? Was he never planning on coming back? As she was contemplating whether to ask the new owners more questions, her phone beeped. A friend had sent her a message. "Check out Alex's Twitter. He made an announcement." Chloe quickly opened Alex's Twitter profile. It was a rare occasion for him to post, as he seldom used social media, especially Twitter. Despite being blocked on his phone, his Twitter was not. The first thing she saw was a picture of him and a girl. The girl was wearing a white dress, her dark hair styled with an air of confidence. She was looking up at the boy beside her, who was wearing a white shirt. They were standing under a large banyan tree, looking absolutely perfect together. His caption read, "Puppy's diary at home. I opened my eyes to see the dim lights highlighting her slender white neck. Instinctively, I wanted to leave a mark, so I kissed it." She stiffened, her breathing quickened. Moments later, I pulled back, leaving a faint red mark. Her eyes were dark and deep, like she'd devour me. I suddenly recalled a phrase from a post I'd read somewhere. At 18 or 19, their heads are filled with uncontrollable thoughts, can't resist temptation. I had indeed jumped out of the car when we got to our complex and started to run towards my apartment building, my face still burning from Sarah's earlier words and the intensity of her gaze. Sarah followed, quickly catching up and grabbing my hand, pulling me back with that same look in her eyes. "Sarah, what do you want?" I asked, my voice a little breathless. She just stared at me, silent for a long moment before standing on her tiptoes to kiss my neck, right where I had imagined kissing hers earlier. "Returning the favor," she said softly, then let my hand go. As I was about to turn and leave, finally, a raspy voice called my name from a distance. "Alex?" I looked over. In the dim light of the street lamp, Chloe stood there, looking as pale as a ghost, walking suddenly towards me. "We need to talk," she said. I honestly didn't expect to see Chloe again. After all, after my dad quit his job with her family, we had moved away, effectively leaving no strings attached. I sighed. "There's nothing left to talk about, Chloe," I said, and started heading upstairs towards my apartment. She moved closer, pleading, "Just for a little bit, Alex. I'm sorry, okay? I shouldn't have transferred you to Northwood High before the exams. I'm not with Mark anymore. I thought we'd never part. It was just a whim with him. We never really started anything serious. I've already ended it with him. Let's reconcile, do you think?" Chloe was a proud person by nature. I'd never seen her with such hope and pleading in her eyes before. "We can't go back, Chloe," I said firmly, not wanting to hear any more. I tugged on Sarah's sleeve. Sarah lowered her head slightly, then gently ruffled my hair. "You go on ahead," she told me. I nodded and walked away briskly. Chloe tried to follow me, but Sarah stopped her. I could hear them starting to talk, but I didn't stop or look back. What was there to worry about? Sarah was a tough girl who could definitely stand her ground in a fight. But I did overhear some of their conversation as I walked away. "Who do you think you are?" Chloe's voice, sharp and strained. "I've grown up with Alex, you know." Sarah replied coolly, "But so what? I'm his girlfriend now." As the elevator door closed behind me, I couldn't hear any more of their voices. Chloe didn't say anything else after that. Her lips were bruised and looked a bit purple. Sarah had apparently really hit her hard during their confrontation. She heard Alex's voice calling for Sarah from upstairs, from the other side of his apartment door. "Are you hurt?" he was asking. That's when it finally, truly sank in for Chloe. Alex didn't care about her anymore. Once, a long time ago, she had gotten into a fight and had come back with some scrapes. Worried her mom would nag her about it, she had gone straight to Alex's house. Back then, Alex had carefully taken a cotton swab and gently treated her wounds, asking softly, "Does it still hurt?" She used to believe, so confidently, that as long as she turned back, Alex would always be there, waiting for her. She had been so sure of it. In the end, Alex had moved on completely. He had a new girlfriend. She remembered the stubborn way Alex's back had looked when he left her that day, his ear bruised and purple from where Mark's basketball, or was it a shuttlecock aimed by her, had hit his hearing aid. Her friend had sighed then and warned her, "Aren't you afraid he might never come back, Chloe?" In her heart, she had sneered at the thought. Alex's dad worked for her family's company, and his family lived right nearby. Everything about Alex was tied to her, or so she had thought. Just a change of schools. Why wouldn't he come back to her? That day, under the setting sun, her friend had said, "Chloe, your first love might end up being someone else's miracle." She hadn't listened then. Looking back now, it all felt so terribly ironic. Sarah and I got engaged during the summer break before our junior year of college. On the day of our engagement party, Sarah's parents showed up. After being with Sarah for all this time, it was the first time I was actually meeting her parents. She'd only ever told me that she grew up with her grandparents in an old house. As for her parents, she only mentioned briefly that they had divorced when she was 7 years old, and she never said anything more about them. Sarah's mom, who came back from overseas for the occasion, was very poised and elegant. Her dad, from the moment her mom appeared, couldn't seem to take his eyes off her. My mom walked over, looking a bit surprised, and asked Sarah's mom, "Aren't you Mrs. Liu, who used to live in the apartment upstairs from us?" Only then did I realize it. Sarah's family used to live just upstairs from us when we were very little. Her parents had divorced, and Sarah had moved away with her mom. Eventually, that apartment had been put up for sale. Gradually, I had forgotten about the little girl from upstairs, until Chloe's family moved in later. I remembered then, I often used to go upstairs to find that little girl and play with her. A distant memory surfaced. A little girl, using her allowance to buy me candy. Her innocent voice echoed faintly in my ears. I looked at Sarah, completely surprised. I suddenly remembered the day she had fought with Chloe. She had said something like, "When it comes to childhood sweethearts, it's me and Alex. We'd known each other long before you were even around." Turns out she had been telling the absolute truth. After our wedding reception, I received an anonymous gift. It was a property transfer agreement, already signed by Chloe, for a small apartment. When I had gone off to college, Chloe had tried to see me a few times, but Sarah was always on guard, and I had consistently refused to meet her. All Chloe could do, apparently, was wait outside my dorm building, night after night. Later, I heard that she had gone abroad to study, had gotten into some kind of shooting incident, and had unfortunately hurt her leg. Mark, I heard, would often ask about Chloe in our old high school group chats. His college entrance exam scores hadn't been great, and he had ended up getting into an art school in the South, leveraging his background in dance. He quickly went through a few rich heiress girlfriends, but none of those relationships lasted. He even tried reaching out to Chloe while she was abroad, but she never replied to him. Sarah emerged from the shower, wrapped in a towel, and sneered at the signed agreement I was holding. She really doesn't know when to quit, does she? Why would she give this to me? I wondered aloud. I tossed the agreement into the trash can and wrapped my arms around Sarah's waist from behind. She looked down at my hands, and her eyes deepened. "Ready to go again?" she murmured. "We've been doing this for a while now, yet still... You're such a tease." After a pause, I changed the topic. "Did you recognize me right from the start, that day at Northwood High?" Sarah ruffled my hair, a familiar, fond gesture. She nodded. "Yeah? Was it just because of the past that you liked me?" I asked, a little insecurely, perhaps. She replied, her voice soft but firm. "No, Alex. You're my childhood, yes, but you're also my love at first sight. All over again." Music filled the living room from the stereo. At this moment, I felt immensely grateful. My world, after going round and round in circles, had still ended up with her. My fingers slid under Sarah's shirt, resting on her flat belly. She took a deep breath, her hand gripping my wrist. Then, she met my lips in a hungry kiss. The urgency between us grew until her arms circled my neck tightly. I stood up, lifting her easily, and laid her gently on the bed, pinning her wrists playfully above her head. My kisses traveled downward, from her neck to her collarbone, continuing lower. My heated breath sometimes accompanied by a husky groan from deep in my throat. Her body trembled in response to my touch. I reached up and removed my hearing aid from my right ear, placing it on the nightstand. She leaned toward my good right ear and chuckled softly, seemingly seeing right through me. Then, shamelessly, she breathed soft moans and gasps directly into my ear. Even with only one functioning ear, it seemed the sounds in the room were still far too loud. The night was still young. After graduation, Sarah and I smoothly got married. When we returned from our honeymoon, my parents had bought a townhouse villa in the suburbs, planning for their retirement. They were worried that professional movers would damage their old, cherished belongings, so they insisted on doing most of the packing and moving themselves. On moving day, Sarah and I went over to help them. A box that Mom was carrying suddenly broke open. The bottom was damp and worn out from age. Everything spilled out onto the floor. I stepped forward to help pick things up and saw my old high school textbooks scattered on the ground. My fingers landed on a leather-bound yearbook. Curiosity piqued. I flipped through a few pages. Each page was filled with messages from my classmates at Northwood High, wishing me success in the college entrance exam, hoping I'd get into my dream school, and wishing me general happiness. At the bottom of their messages, they had written their own wishes. Half of them were for wealth and beauty, and the other half were hoping to become a pop star or a famous singer. My fingers paused on the very last page. It was Sarah's entry. Back then, during those last hectic days of high school, everyone was busy writing messages in each other's yearbooks, passing them around the chaotic classroom. I had been so busy writing messages for others and sharing contact info that I had never actually read through my own yearbook page by page. This was my first time seeing what Sarah had written. Her note wished me well in getting into my dream school. And then, underneath the section for my own wishes, she had written just 2 simple words: "Marry you." Sarah's epilogue. Sarah never told Alex this, but when he first stood at the podium in their Northwood High classroom, introducing himself, just one glance was all it took for her to recognize him. That familiar face, that familiar voice. "Hi, everyone. I'm Alex." In her memory, a little boy in blue overalls used to follow her around everywhere. "I'm Alex," he'd say. Later on, as they became familiar friends, she, little Sarah, had spent all her allowance buying him candy. She'd proudly tell anyone who would listen, "I bought this candy for my husband." She vaguely knew back then that a husband was someone you were supposed to spend your whole life with. And little Alex had said, "Then I'll be your husband." Thanks to her constant supply of sweets, 6-year-old Alex had cavities before he even lost all his baby teeth. Seeing him up there on that podium, dressed in the Northwood High uniform, a dark red plaid skirt for girls, a white shirt for him, her heart had skipped a beat. She couldn't help but smile to herself. Her husband. He was back. Someone in the class had noticed her expression, clearly shocked by her sudden smile. She had shot them a look and quickly pretended to nap on her desk to hide her emotions. She never expected that Alex would be seated right in front of her. Listening to him chat with Tom, her nose filled with the faint, familiar scent of him. After school that first day, she didn't leave right away. She waited until Alex had finished his studying. She was sure he'd wake her up before leaving, because Tom had told him earlier that the school would lock up soon. And sure enough, he did. She had to hold back a grin as she looked up at his close-up, pretty face and simply said, "Thanks." Then, seeing his stunned eyes, she had smiled and gotten up to leave, letting him follow. At home that night, she dreamed about her childhood. She dreamed of when she was 7, and she and her mom had returned home unexpectedly. She'd heard her dad's voice mingling with a woman's cooing sounds. In her ears, the sounds of her dad begging her mom in fear and her mom's angry questioning had replayed. That was followed by her dad's embarrassed apology, which quickly turned into anger. She had rushed into the room, standing in front of her mom, trying to protect her, but her dad had just thrown her into a nearby room and locked the door. Outside, she heard things being smashed, and then all sounds stopped. The door was opened by Alex. He had hugged her as she curled up in the corner, terrified. Alex had brought her loads of candy, his favorite thing back then. He didn't know what was happening, just that it was something that scared all kids. By that evening, her parents had returned, each holding a red book, their divorce certificates, and some other documents. Her mom packed her bags with red, swollen eyes, booking tickets to go abroad. Her dad had sneered, leaving with his arm around his secretary. The big house was now just hers, empty and silent. It wasn't until late that night that her grandparents came to take her back to their old home. In the car, she had tried to memorize the route back to Alex, but by the next day, she'd forgotten it. She tried going back many times, but her grandparents, thinking she wanted to find her parents, would just sigh sadly and stop her. She just wanted to find Alex. She knew, even then, that she'd been abandoned by her parents. City D was so big. Even though she looked for him week after week, she never found her way back to that neighborhood, back to Alex. And yet, City D was also so small. Small enough for her to meet Alex again, years later, in a run-down classroom at Northwood High. Summer, it seemed, had never really left. They were bound to meet again.